Going into my final week before delivering my child, my baby girl, my doctors decided to induce coma because my blood pressure was going up. I was having recurring headaches. I was having kidney problems. The swelling just would not go down. So they decided to induce coma to see if they could bring the blood pressure down. While in that coma, I didn't remember anything except hearing my mother crying by my bedside. I was in the ICU, strung up, and I could hear my mother crying and praying to God to deliver me. There was nobody else there but my mom. And she prayed so hard. And to this day, I still hear her voice when I close my eyes. Welcome to Blooms and Stitches by Anne Marie. If you are watching this video on Sunday, May 10th, and you are a mother, whether biological or otherwise, I want to start off by saying a happy Mother's Day to you from me and my family here at Blooms and Stitches by Anne Marie. Um, this morning's video is a little bit emotional. It's an ode to my mother. I don't want it to be very long, but it's starting out with a few questions that I've been asked after I uploaded this video on TikTok. There's a young lady who says that she's wondering why women are in a relationship with men who can't read and write. And there's a lady on here named Denise. If you go into my repost, you'll see where she's commenting on it. And this is my 2 cents. I didn't want to put an entire diatribe under her video. But so for those of you who didn't get a chance to watch that video, the video was me responding to someone saying, be careful about being in a relationship with somebody who can't read and write. And my response was telling my personal story, my a part of my life story about being in a relationship with somebody who can't read and write. And I didn't know initially that they couldn't read and write, and I found out a different way. And this is how I'm starting my story this morning. Quick backstory: I grew up in a community that was characterized by music, the fishing village, and a few other things. In that community, on a Sunday, where a lot of the commercial and entertainment activity took place, was where we had something called Raytown Holits. The name of the community is Raytown. They had a vibrant entertainment industry and fishing industry in that area, but they also had other things going on at the time. And one of the darker part of the community was that there were, some gangs in that area at the time in Raytown. There was a gentleman, the overseer, and if you were reading some of my books that is on my channel, you'll know exactly where I'm coming from. So the overseer had been essayed, sexually assaulted in that house, and I hadn't told my mother. We had grown up extremely poor. We've experienced being homeless. We've had our issues where we were living in different places, not necessarily our home. And so for the first time in a long time, we were not living with my aunt, or I was not staying with my mother's friend, or she, was living in a place that wasn't necessarily hers, but we were living in a room that we had rented. And so a part of me was scared of saying it to my mother. Also, I didn't have the best of relationship with her at the time growing up, because in our culture we were taught a child is to be seen and not heard. There were questions about my paternity growing up. So there was a lot of things that created a barrier between me and my mom at the time. Another reason why I didn't tell her about the abuse or the assault that I'd gone through was that sometimes when you're living in these inner city communities, victims are blamed, instead of them saying, what can we do to help you through it? A lot of people will say, oh, it's how she's dressed, or because she's running around with a lot of boys, so she got abused because of this, or sometimes people will take it back and they will curse you out with it whenever you and them are in an argument. So I didn't speak about it for most of my adult life. But what I did do was to reach out to somebody in that community for their help, their guidance. Well, I wouldn't say guidance. I reach out to them for their help, for security. The security that I'm talking about is not from the authorities, because there was a great deal of mistrust. Anyway, so that's a backstory about, me not telling my mom, and how it created an issue going up. So the person I reached out to was one of the guys in the area that was a part of what we call gangs. And if you're living in the Caribbean, you will understand what we mean about corner gang. It's similar to gangs in Canada, in the US, in the UK, in different parts of the world, but they're different makeup and different understanding. Anyway, at 13, 12, 13, my abuse had started. 13, 14, I met this guy in the community that was a part of this gang, and I started speaking to him. And I told him what happened. Instead of telling my mother, I told him, and he said, okay, you're my girlfriend from now on. Don't worry about anything. I'll deal with it. So, what I essentially did was to jump out of frying pan, jump into the fire. And so, what he did was to approach the overseer, and he warned him off, hey, don't talk to my girlfriend, don't touch her, blah, blah, blah. And it became an issue. What it did was to resolve the situation of the overseer trying to touch on me when I was in the house. However, now this person who was a part of this gang, who is 10 years my junior, he was 10 years older than me. So I'm 13 going into 14. He was almost 24 at the time. And he said, you're my girlfriend. I was going to high school. I would get, lunch from him periodically. I would get different things from him. I felt like I was on top of the world because what my mother couldn't give me, we were extremely poor. What she couldn't provide for me, he was, you know? And so I felt like I was in a better place. I was more secured. I didn't have much that I was in need for. And yeah, I felt like I was the shit. And I didn't know that that was grooming at that age. How did I find out that he couldn't read and write? Couple of mornings I would go over to his yard, because he lived down the road from where we live. He didn't live with me. So lived down the road. So a couple of morning I would go over his yard, to either pick up my lunch money or just say good morning or whatever it is. So fast forward into um maybe fifth form, the end of high school. I would go over in the mornings. He would be sitting around some of his friends in the yard, and I would see him reading the Bible, because he reads the Bible religiously every morning and says prayers. He was like that, even though he was involved in illegal activities and doing all kinds of stuff. He says he was very religious. In fact, he would be walking around selling weed, but he had his little small pocket Bible with him. I would see him doing that almost every morning, and by this time we had been sexually um, involved. We start having, intercourse. We started having intercourse when I was in fourth form, going into fifth form, and how that happens was, he sending his friends to come and get me, and when they came and they got me, I went down into his yard, and that's where my first intercourse took place. I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, you know what, he's my boyfriend. He's giving me money. He's making sure I'm safe, and he's making sure that I'm going to school. So hey, it is what it is. I graduated from high school. I got my high school diploma. I passed a couple of subjects. I was on top of the world, and plus I had this more mature guy who is now my boyfriend. However, his demeanor began to change a little bit the older I got. He began to speak to me roughly. You know, if I made a mistake or if I did something that he didn't like, if he saw me hanging out with my friends on the road, he would call me names like bitch or that kind of thing. And I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe because I was young. I don't know, youthful exuberance, stupidity, stupidity. I took it. And so one morning after graduating school and in between university, there was still that era of what are you going to do with your life? Anyway, one morning I went over to his place and he was reading the Bible, and you had to wait until he finished reading his Bible before you could approach him. And he was reading the Bible and the Bible was upside down. And I'm like, he's reading this Bible and it's upside down. But it didn't really connect. I'm like, can't he read and write? I've never seen him read or write anything because our relationship was just solely about him giving me stuff, or lately about me being intimate with him and stuff. So I didn't see him write stuff or read stuff. The most I've seen him done is the Bible, but no, the Bible is upside down. What is he doing? Anyway, I confirmed that he couldn't read and write when he asked me to fill out a passport form for him. That's when I confirmed that he couldn't read and write. By this time, I'd already graduated from high school and I was pregnant. I was pregnant. And in the middle of this, there were so many community members who would warn me off and said, this is not the guy that you want to be involved with. You're a young girl, you've got a future ahead of you. Stop being like this with this gentleman. And I would go straight back to him and tell him, Susan say this, she said that, because I felt like he had my best interest at heart. So I needed to tell him when these people were speaking negatively about him, because how could they be speaking negatively about him when he's like that, right? My mother caught wind of everything. And my mother has been telling me, please, Anne, don't get involved with this guy. And I just would not listen. I wouldn't listen until I got pregnant. As a child, my mother was passed around from house to house because at that time her mom thought it would be the best thing for her, financially and otherwise, for her to not reside in the home that she was born in. My grandmother was very poor, and so to provide better for my mother, she would send her to different families. One of the family was a pastor, and her husband, and that was the first place where she was abused. Coming up through life, she had gone through so many um, instances of abuse, and the generational trauma of having your children and giving them to another family to ensure, you're thinking that if you do that, they will be better able to be provided for. The trauma of that had followed down into my family. So, like what my grandmother did with my mother, she also did it with some of her children. When she started to be abused by her first two children's father, she left them with the father and escaped from that relationship. She thought she was doing the best thing because she didn't have the wherewithal to provide for them. She did not have the education to get um, employment to provide for them. So she left that relationship and she went, and the cycle repeated itself. And then came me. And she tried to break the cycle at that time, but she did with what she could. And she wasn't taught how to be the best mother. She wasn't taught how to be the best parent. She brought me up in how she could, in the best way she could. And there were some times in life where I thought she was such a harsh mother. But this morning, in reflection, I thought about when I got pregnant with my first child by this gang member, how he promised so many times that he would shoot me, what he would do to me. And then eventually, when I got pregnant, there was no support from him. There was no more money coming my way. There is no more security from him. She, my mother, was the one who had to step up. Even though she had gone through such a struggle in her life, she found the grace as a mother to step up for me. When my dad, who resided in the US, found out that I was pregnant, he wanted nothing else to do with me. He said, "Go and let your baby father help you." Wanted nothing else to do with me. My mother was my child's father, and she was also a mother to me. I went through a really difficult pregnancy with my first child, for that same gentleman. Because I was young and it was my first pregnancy, I had preeclampsia. What does that mean? I had high blood pressure. And not only did I have hypertension, I started to get swollen all over the first place that got swollen was my feet, then my hands, then my face started to be swollen. I had difficulty urinating because of the preeclampsia. I was admitted in the hospital from I was 24 weeks pregnant. Oh, my mother was there almost every day, despite the fact that we did not have the financing. She ensured that she showed up and showed out. At the time, she was struggling with diabetes. She had cracks under her feet bottom. And every day, despite the cracks under her foot, despite being sick, she would find her way from Raytown to University Hospital to come and look for me every day. Going into my final week before delivering my child, my baby girl, my doctors decided to induce coma because my blood pressure was going up. I was having recurring headaches. I was having kidney problems. The swelling just would not go down. So they decided to induce coma to see if they could bring the blood pressure down. While in that coma, I didn't remember anything except hearing my mother crying by my bedside. I was in the ICU, strung up, and I could hear my mother crying and praying to God to deliver me. There was nobody else there but my mom. And she prayed so hard. And to this day, I still hear her voice when I close my eyes. Despite her warnings of what could happen, I was stubborn. I was a rebellious teen. One, because of what I'd gone through, the sexual abuse that I'd gone through. Two, because I had father issues, daddy issues. Three, because I thought I had nobody that I could speak to except for this man that was grooming me. And so I rebelled. And she withstood all of that, despite not having the tools to be a perfect mom. And I criticized her a lot. I criticized her a lot growing up. I know my sisters and brothers. I know my first brother hate my mom because he said that she left him and she ran away. But what he didn't understand is that she sacrificed. She thought she was making a sacrifice to give him a better life than what she could provide. This morning, when I was thinking about it, and I thought about the ups and downs, I thought about some of the things that I said to her in retaliation. I thought about how I was upset, how angry and hurt I was at her, because there were times that she lashed out at me. There were times she would tell me things like, "I wish I had somewhere I could leave you to." And I didn't understand. I didn't understand what she was going through. This morning, when I look at my own babies, the baby, my first baby that I had, that I went through pre-eclampsia, that I was in a coma in the ICU with that pregnancy. She will be 30 years old on the 25th of this month. Sadly, her dad has passed away. Her dad was shot and killed, again in gang warfare. But I'm showing you the strength of a mother. They start out at nothing. They start out at nothing and they give you everything that they have. And I know there are a lot of people watching this video this morning that may have their own mommy issues. But I'm going to ask you to try and understand, stand in your own shoe and understand exactly where that mother is coming from. This morning, on Mother's Day, I want us to lean on the strength of a mother. Richie Stephens sung a song that said, "Mother, you deserve a pot of gold." I wish my mom was alive to give her that pot of gold. I tried, but she passed away before seeing her grandchildren pass the worst. I tried. And in memory of my mom, I want to send a happy Mother's Day to you amazing mothers, to the best mothers, to the most loving and caring mothers. You deserve a pot of gold. A happy Mother's Day from Blooms and Stitches by Anne Marie. Have a great day, Mommy. I love you. Many of y'all ask me, where is that baby? No, the one that will be 30 years old on the 25th of this month. Let me show you her. She's in there making breakfast for me. Look at her. She's baking in there. It's my first baby. What are these, Ash?
Breakfast hot pockets.
And she made them from scratch for me because she knows I love them. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you.
Yes.
She's shy. She don't like camera. Come give me a kiss. Say happy Mother's Day now.
Oh my God, me say it this morning.
I
Happy
know.
Mother's Day, Lord God. Love you too.
She's shy. She don't like the camera. And my youngest one is in here in his messy room. But they have different personalities, but they still love me. This is my youngest, Nicholas. This is my last baby. And the second one is not living with me, but he's coming this week. Happy Mother's Day, y'all.